The air in my apartment had always filled with a specific kind of nostalgia, not just comfort and sepia-tone kind, but the digital dust of forgotten media, the hum of ancient VCRs, and the smell of decaying plastic. I collect lost media, unaired pilots, network screw-ups, bizarre local access shows, anything that fell through the cracks of the internet age. My particular obsession was a reality TV show from the early 2000s. There was this raw, unpolished quality to it back then, before every beat of the group focused into oblivion. And that was the apex of that era. There was the Osbournes. My fascination with the first family of metal went from beyond just their MTV show. I'd recall all of the biographies, watched every interview, scoured the old forum posts for tidbits of unreleased footage or urban legends. It was during one of these deep dives, late into the sleepless night, that I stumbled upon truly obscure thread. It wasn't on Reddit or on a popular paranormal forum. It was buried deep in the forgotten corner of old defunct peer-to-peer sharing website. Archived by some digital archaeologist, the thread was titled simply, The Grey Tape. The posts were old, almost 15 years old, and riddled with dead links and broken image files. But the core story was chilling. Purported lost episode of the Osbournes, hastily pulled from the broadcast after a single test screening, or perhaps never even slated to air. The few descriptions were more vague, almost poetic in their terror. Ozzy just changed. Sharon looked like she had seen a ghost. It felt wrong. Most dismissed it as an elaborate hoax. A creepypasta before the term was even widely used, but for me it was more of a siren song. It took me months. I followed the old every breadcrumb, every graining screenshot, and every cryptic hint. I cross-referenced an old forum usernames with eBay accounts, even delved into the dark net for a brief settling period. Finally, after a truly bizarre exchange involving an anonymous P.O. box in rural Ohio, and cryptocurrency I barely understood, a package arrived, and it was a padded envelope containing a single unmarked VHS tape. Its casing was a dull, uniform gray, devoid of any label or writing. It didn't even have the typical grooves for a sticker, just plain featureless plastic. My heart hammered into my chest. This was it. The holy grail of my collection. Or just an empty tape. I hooked up my antique VCR, the one I painstakingly have refurbished specifically for these kinds of acquisitions. The machine whirled to life as its familiar mechanical groan filling the otherwise silent room. I slid in the gray tape. The tracking of it was a little off, and the picture wavering slightly. But then with a burst of static and color, the familiar MTV logo appeared, and then the iconic animated opening sequence of the Osbournes. My excitement was palpable, nearly overshadowing the growing unease. The theme song, Crazy Train, blared in the chaotic yet comforting anthem. The distorted family photos flashed on the screen. Everything seemed perfectly normal. The episode began in the Osbournes' living room, a familiar landscape of a gothic light decor and general clutter. Sharon was on the phone, clearly stressed. Her voice was a little high-pitched than normal. Kelly was complaining about a fashion emergency, while Jack was attempting to pull a prank on their security guard. Typical Osbournes. But then I noticed the subtle differences. The lighting seemed falter, almost clinical. The usual handheld camera work meant to take a more spontaneous feel was almost too steady, too deliberate. The abandoned noise was muted, and the usual counterponing of their home somehow dampened. It felt like watching a play, not a reality show. Then there was Ozzy. He was sitting on the sofa, facing away from the camera, with just a dark, hunched silhouette. Usually he'd be wandering around muttering to himself or interacting with the dogs, but he was unnervingly still. Sharon ended her call and clearly exasperated. Ozzy, are you just going to sit here all day like a gargoyle? We have that interview thing. Ozzy didn't respond. He just sat there. Kelly walked past, brushing his shoulder. Dad, you okay? Still nothing. Even Jack, usually quick with a gibble, hesitated. He looked generally concerned. Ozzy, come on, Sharon said. her voice low, laced with a rare tremor of uncertainty. "Ozzy, sweetie, look at me." Slowly, almost agonizing, Ozzy turned, and that's when the first real chill hit down my spine. His eyes, they weren't the usual glazed, half-lidded eyes of a man perpetually jet-lagged or in haze. They were wide open, unnervingly lucid, and completely devoid of their usual warmth or confusion. They were sharp, focused, like a predator observing its prey, or a scientist examining a specimen. He didn't speak in his usual slurred ramble. He just simply stared, not at Sharon, but directly into the camera, into my eyes, and he smiled. It wasn't Ozzy's usual playful, slightly manic grin. It was a slow, deliberate stretching of his lips, revealing too much gum, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a smile of profound, unsettling understanding. The scene cut abruptly. When it returned, they were in the kitchen. Ozzy was standing perfectly still by the counter, his back to the family, who were gathered around the large island, looking visibly uncomfortable. He wasn't mumbling or singing. He was meticulously arranging a pile of his various prescription pill bottles, not in his usual haphazard way, but lining them up with obsessive precision, color-coding them, and aligning them by height. He was creating a pattern. "Dad's being weird," Kelly whispered to Jack, who nodded mutely. Sharon was watching Ozzy with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. Without turning around, Ozzy began to speak. His voice was completely different. It was clear, articulate, almost academic. "You see, the illusion of chaos is merely a veil, a necessary construct to prevent the mild from perceiving the comic truth. The inherited geometry of the void is recursive to the patterns of non-existence. They are all around us, in the dust motes, in the very air we breathe. We merely lack the right perspective to see their true function." Sharon gasped slightly. Kelly and Jack exchanged terrified glances. This wasn't just Ozzy being Ozzy. This was a complete departure. His posture was rigged, his movements were unnaturally precise as he continued to arrange the bottles into what looked like a complex three-dimensional sigil. "The patterns," Ozzy continued, his voice resonating with a unnerving conviction. "They are the keys. The gates are not locked by iron, but by ignorance. The comforting lies we tell ourselves about the order and purpose. There is no purpose. The only patterns and the hunger that drives them." He finished the arrangement of bottles in the strange indicated mandala of plastic and labels. Then, with that same terrifying lucidity, he turned slowly to face the camera again. His eyes bore into mine, and he reached out to the computer, and his hand trembling slightly on the counter, not from weakness, but from almost electric intensity. He picked up the small ceramic frog ornament, one of the many trinkets that scattered around their house. The family was frozen. Sharon had clapped a hand over her mouth. Kelly was visibly fighting back tears, and her face was pale. Jack looked like he was about to vomit. Ozzy held the ceramic frog up, his gaze never leaving the lens. He slowly, deliberately, silently began to squeeze. The sound was muffled, almost swallowed by the low, intense hum that had somehow crept into the audio feed. A faint crack was heard, and then another. His fingers tightened, muscles straining, his face expressionless, devoid of any of his usual tics or grunts of effort. He simply squeezed and squeezed. A small chips of ceramic flaked off, glazed, cracked, and peeled them. The frog's painted eyes seemed to stare accusingly at me through the screen, and then with a final, sickening crunch, the ceramic frog disintegrated in his hands, crumbling into a fine, glittering powder and sharp shards. Ozzy didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just let the broken pieces fall from his open palm into the kitchen counter like dust. He then lifted his hand palm up, revealing red, raw skin, dotted with microscopic cuts from the shards. He slowly, methodically licked the blood from his fingers. His eyes, still locked on the camera, seemed to deepen into black pools. "The patterns," he whispered. His voice was low and raspy hiss. "They must be fed." The screen instantly cut to static. the roar of white noise that assaulted my ears. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. My hands were shaking violently, so I could barely hold the remote. I scrambled for the power button, plunging the room into darkness and silence. The silence, however, was worse. It wasn't empty. It was filled with the reverberations of Ozzy's unnatural clarity, the image of his eyes, and the sounds of ceramic shattering, and the chilling final whisper. I sat there in the dark, barely breathing, for what felt like an eternity. When I finally moved, it was to fumble for my phone. I needed to verify this, to find anything about the gray tape, but my frantic searches yielded to nothing. The old forum thread, which had been archived now, showed a 404 not found error. Every link I had saved, every obscure reference, had vanished as if scrubbed from my existence. It was as if the tape, and the story as it told, belonged to only me. For weeks I couldn't shake it. Every time I hear Ozzy's voice, even in interviews or his music, I hear that clear, chilling tone beneath it. His public persona, his bumbling, lovable rock star counterculture, and now felt like a desperate act, a mask to hide something truly unspeakable. Were those glimpses of lucidity always there, just beneath the surface of the persona, waiting for the right moment to break through? Was the gray tape a peek behind the curtain, a moment where the real Ozzy, the one unburdened by fame or expectation, revealed something truly terrifying about himself, or perhaps about the nature of the reality of itself? I tried watching all the other episodes of the Osbournes, but it was no use. The innocence, the manufactured chaos, it all felt hollow. I saw Sharon's lingering stress, Kelly's frustration, Jack's wary resignation, not all typical family drama, but as people knowingly bearing witness to something they couldn't comprehend, something that occasionally manifested in the man they loved. The gray tape sits on my shelf now, tucked away amongst my collection of forgotten media. I haven't watched it again. I can't. The thought of seeing those eyes, hearing that voice, sends a shiver down my spine that goes deeper than fear. It's unsettling knowledge that sometimes what's truly lost isn't just a piece of media, but a piece of your own understanding of the world, and sometimes it's better left that way.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.